in the forefront of this community of what I call la communauté des bâtisseurs, les ingénieurs, les architectes et tous ceux qui sont là pour modeler, faciliter, transformer un paysage, transformer un pays. Au fait, l'urbaniste se perd dans la pluridisciplinarité parce qu'on parle très rarement de l'urbaniste. On parle de l'architecte, on parle de l'ingénieur, et l'urbaniste est perdu dans tout ça. Mais ce bill, pour une fois, ce projet de loi, met en exergue, met les projecteurs sur une profession très mal connue, en fait. Et j'ai tendance à dire que l'urbaniste ne nourrit pas son homme et ne nourrit pas ses disciples. Je connais beaucoup d'urbanistes qui ont fait des études très poussées, qui ont abandonné leur carrière d'urbaniste parce qu'il n'y avait pas de possibilité, il n'y a pas de poste, et qui se sont retrouvés, je connais deux qui étaient au ministère des Terres, qui se sont retrouvés juristes et qui sont devenus après, et moi-même j'ai fait autre chose.
Ministre.
Donc c'est dommage. C'est dommage, parce que c'est l'urbaniste et l'aménageur qui transforment le pays. Et aujourd'hui, il y a une urgence. C'est pour ça que je félicite le Premier ministre supplément d'amener ce projet de loi et de mettre les projecteurs sur l'urbaniste ou l'aménageur. Il ne faut jamais oublier que nous n'avons que 2400 km² de terre, 60 km sur 40. Nous n'avons que 240 km de côte. Et nous avons une des densités les plus fortes au monde, 60 000, 1,4 million, sur 2400 km², ça fait 60 000 personnes par kilomètre carré. Et nous voulons être un pays producteur de sucre, nous voulons être une destination touristique de qualité, nous voulons être un pays où il y a une certaine industrialisation, nous voulons être un pays où il y a une urbanisation avec les smart cities, et nous voulons être un pays aussi d'autosuffisance agricole. Donc les enjeux sont énormes, et aujourd'hui, le bien le plus précieux, c'est la terre. Il ne reste plus de paires géométriques. Il ne nous reste plus de terre fertile. Donc la première chose qu'il faudrait faire, Monsieur le Président, this is I have always wanted to press on this, we need a sugar map of Mauritius. Land allocated for sugar which cannot be used for something else, because we need 300,000 or 350,000 or 400,000 tons of sugar, and to have 1 arpent is 40 tons of cane and about 4 tons of sugar. So if you want to have 400,000 tons of sugar, you need 100,000 arpents of land. And you must not sacrifice this land if we need to still to be a sugar land. Because we need the sugar, we need the bagasse, and we need it for our ecosystem. Donc l'aménageur, dans un premier temps, doit redéfinir Maurice, et il y a urgence, Monsieur le Président, pour créer the sugar map of Mauritius. Deuxième chose, les smart cities. Les smart cities sont des projets qui sont pilotés par le privé. C'est eux qui décident où ils veulent faire la smart city. Quel est le rôle de l'autorité? Quel est le rôle des autorités concernant la transformation de l'île Maurice? Le Premier ministre, par intérim, a parlé de l'île Maurice 2040. Moi, je crois qu'il faut parler de l'île Maurice 2050, 2060, si on veut vraiment savoir exactement qu'est-ce qu'on va faire avec chaque parcelle de terre. Nous n'avons plus de pas géométriques, il n'y en a plus. Les smart cities ne devraient pas être des zones d'urbanisme isolées. Il ne faut pas qu'il y ait une rupture. C'est l'aménagement de territoire qui fait qu'il n'y ait pas de rupture entre les régions aisées, les régions de prospérité et les régions modeste. Et c'est le rôle de l'urbaniste, justement, de réconcilier ces zones. Je vais prendre deux exemples. Oyeta est un village, c'est un cul-de-sac, au fin fond de Vakwa. Mais la route, la Vigie, la Marie, Oyeta, Bossonge, va désenclaver complètement cette région et Oyeta va se retrouver sur un axe passant qui va transformer complètement cette région. Deuxième exemple. Barclay était un fin fond. Le passage du métro a fait que Barclay est devenu maintenant un endroit où il y a un train qui passe toutes les 10 minutes ou toutes les 15 minutes. Donc, le rôle de l'urbaniste, le rôle de l'aménageur est un rôle fondamental pour redessiner la carte de Maurice, créer les zones, remettre les infrastructures et les réseaux au premier rang des priorités. Quand vous construisez une route, c'est aussi un axe de développement. Aux États-Unis, les villes ont été construites sur les chemins de fer, sur les gares. Donc, quand on va dessiner une route, on est en train de redessiner cette région. Alors, le ministère a un rôle extrêmement important à jouer. C'est pour ça qu'en France, il y a un grand débat aujourd'hui. C'est que l'aménagement du territoire devrait être dirigiste, volontariste, et c'est la politique, c'est-à-dire le gouvernement, qui doit dire oui, vous pouvez faire cet aménagement-là ici, et non pas là-bas. Et c'est comme ça qu'on a le schéma directeur d'aménagement urbain qui implique, qui donne les zones de priorité, et c'est l'aménagement de territoire volontariste dicté par l'État. Vous savez, Monsieur le Président, on ne peut pas avoir un hôtel 5 étoiles et un village 2 étoiles séparés par une route. On ne peut pas avoir une île Maurice de 2 vitesses. Et qui peut corriger ça? C'est le town planner, l'aménageur qui peut corriger ça. Empêcher cette rupture. Le gouvernement a un projet de 12 000 maisons. J'avais assisté à une réunion, j'avais écouté la réunion, j'avais regardé tout le monde, et à la fin de la réunion, je n'avais rien dit. Alors on m'a demandé pourquoi. Alors j'expliquais, ce n'est pas possible de faire 500 maisons dans chaque circonscription, parce que les circonscriptions ne sont pas les mêmes, l'offre et la demande ne sont pas les mêmes, la possibilité d'avoir les terres, la disponibilité des terres n'est pas la même. Donc il faudra réaménager maintenant. Quand vous emmenez 500 familles quelque part, c'est 2000 personnes, c'est 2000 personnes, c'est 1000 enfants, il faut l'école, il faut les espaces verts, les logements, c'est rien. Il faut reconstruire les villes, c'est comme ça qu'on a eu les nouvelles villes. Alors, ce que je voudrais dire, Monsieur le Président, c'est que nous avons une occasion là, en valorisant l'urbanisme, l'aménageur, de lui donner la possibilité, avec une équipe pluridisciplinaire, c'est-à-dire les ingénieurs, les surveilleuses et les promoteurs, de redessiner Maurice. Si on ne redessine pas Maurice, à ce moment-là, ce sera la valeur de l'argent, c'est le sens du profit qui va redessiner Maurice dans des zones de prospérité, des zones fermées, des gated communities, et vous aurez aussi batterie cassée, vous aurez un certain nombre de régions qui seront à ce moment-là des no man's land. Alors, ce que je voudrais dire, Monsieur le Président, c'était pour dire qu'il y a une urgence. Et la loi arrive au bon moment de valoriser l'urbaniste avec sa compétence. Deuxième chose, au ministère des Terres, il y a des professionnels extrêmement compétents. J'ai travaillé avec eux. On a fait le master plan de Bellon avec 5 hôtels, le master plan de Saint-Félix avec 5 hôtels, le master plan des Salines avec 5 hôtels, le master plan de Grand B, le Urban Terminal ici, à Victoria. Donc, les personnalités, les experts compétents sont là. Il faut qu'on ait une vue d'ensemble de l'île Maurice de demain, et c'est cette vue d'ensemble qui pourrait donc dessiner l'île Maurice de demain, en tenant compte de plusieurs choses maintenant. La terre est précieuse, Deuxièmement, il faut absolument tenir compte de la fragilité de l'écosystème. Il faut absolument tenir compte de l'impact du changement climatique, parce que nous sommes un des pays les plus vulnérables. Il faut regarder nos plages, par exemple. Je prends 3 cas. Si on prend le village de Trou-de-Douce, qui attire 400 000 touristes par an, si chaque touriste dépense 1 000 roupies, ça fait 400 millions engendrés par ce village. Qu'est-ce que nous lui donnons en retour? Pas grand-chose. Grand B, c'est pareil. Alors, il y a une redistribution des richesses, il y a une redistribution des priorités d'aménagement, et ça peut se faire justement par l'urbaniste, et ça peut se faire parce que quand les autorités sont volontaristes et dirigent la politique d'aménagement de territoire. Let me now say a few words on the bill, some clauses. When it comes to the council, the composition of the council, first of all, we have 4 registered planners from the ministry. Then you have 3 registered planners from the local government. That's 7. Then you have 1 representative of the ministry. That's 8. You have 1 representative from the Attorney General's office. That's 9. Which means that out of 30, 9 people are from the public sector. But the development process, the billions, it's true that government is doing a lot of infrastructural works, but the billions are coming from investment from the private sector. So I'm a bit surprised that we have only 2 representatives of town planners from the private practice. I think that this synergy between the public and private sector is essential, because we as the authority, we can impose a number of conditions, but then the promoter should be given the incentives to be able to invest, because he's not going to invest just to invest. On ne peut pas faire un hôtel juste parce qu'un promoteur ne va pas venir faire un hôtel parce qu'il veut investir dans l'hôtel. Il faut que l'hôtel se retrouve dans une zone balnéaire qui puisse attirer les touristes. C'est pour ça que, par exemple, quand on a fait la région de Bellon et Saint-Félix, on a vendu cette région-là comme une autre île Maurice. Alors, je crois que la synergie au niveau du secteur privé, avec le secteur privé, est nécessaire. Donc là, je trouve que c'est comme si le council, finalement, it's a public sector council with people from the ministry and people from the local government. Maintenant, je reviens à quelque chose que j'avais dit tout à l'heure. Au fait, l'urbanisme se perd dans la pluridisciplinarité, parce que finalement, il y a les ingénieurs, il y a les architectes, il y a les surveilleurs, et il n'a pas de rôle. Au fait, c'est lui qui devrait piloter, parce que c'est lui qui a une vue d'ensemble du projet. Deuxième chose concernant le projet de loi, c'est l'enregistrement des urbanistes venant de l'étranger. Alors, the foreign firm of town planners. No foreign firm or town planner shall provide town planning services in Mauritius unless the firm is registered with the council on such terms and conditions as may be prescribed. It's extremely important, Mr. Acting Prime Minister, Honorable Acting Prime Minister, to know what are the terms and conditions that are going to be prescribed for foreigners to be here, to be able to work in Mauritius. Now, you know that we don't have many big projects in Mauritius. And if we were to have foreign firms, with all the capacity they have, with all the brilliant ideas they may have, very easily they will not be able to, they will overshadow the local counterparts, and they will overshadow the local people. And already, as I said, the town planner is a bit lost in this team of developers. So what I'm proposing here is that if you have foreigners coming, they should, as in other cases, I think it's for example, bar for the law agencies, you should be able to team up with local town planners to create agencies where you have the synergy between those coming from abroad and those who are based here, so that they can be able then, in a mixed partnership, tender apply to tenders and be able to participate in most of the projects. I think this is extremely important. It's very sensible and very sensitive. I have been told that we have only 80 planners in Mauritius, and about 30 are the ministry, and another number, about 20, are in the local government sector, which means that finally we have very few town planners. And now I come to what Honorable Mohammed said. He talked about the institute. I think that we should be able to provide town and country planning degrees at the University of Mauritius for architects, for engineers who want, in fact, to be able to become developers. Because as I said, the town planner is lost in this huge team of developers. And having the notion, having all the ingredients of town and country planning would be very helpful. And I think that we can have, of course, the Institute for Training. And I think that Honorable Mohammed was right in saying that we should have up-to-date technology as regards to climate change, use of materials, how to use solar energy, the house of tomorrow, the house of tomorrow, because how do we define it? We have not yet defined the perfect house for tomorrow in Mauritius, for Mauritius in 2050. What is happening today, you know? Because of Cyclone Carol, everybody left the iron roofs and built concrete houses. And then after the concrete houses, we had it one story, and then we built another story. So today we have thousands of stories of houses of ground plus one or ground plus two. The children are not here, and you have a poor couple in a huge house. But we should define the house of tomorrow, the Mauritian house of tomorrow, where we can have the solar energy, where we can have the proper lighting, where we can have the proper material, where we can have the proper construction as regards to climate change. So these are the comments I wanted to make, Mr. Speaker, sir. I would like to say a few words on, I've spoken in Clause 7 and about the foreign town plan. Monsieur le Président, si on laisse la notion de profitabilité dans le développement urbain, on va finir par se retrouver avec des zones, des régions riches, prospères, et des zones qui seront des régions délaissées. Le projet, justement, le rôle de l'urbaniste, c'est de trouver la synergie entre ces différentes régions, et le rôle de l'État, en définissant les infrastructures, comme j'ai bien expliqué, en définissant les réseaux. Par exemple, la distribution numérique sur toute l'île. Est-ce qu'il y a des zones où l'Internet est accessible ou pas? Si un industriel veut s'implanter à Goodlands, est-ce qu'il a le débit nécessaire? Donc, c'est l'aménageur qui peut justement tenir compte de tout ça. Et donc, il y a aujourd'hui une impérieuse nécessité et l'urgence de faire qu'il y ait l'aménagement de territoire dicté par les autorités publiques. Parce que la terre est précieuse, on n'en a pas beaucoup. Et il ne faut pas créer des gated communities après des no man's land, où il y aura la drogue, la prostitution, où il y aura des problèmes sociaux, parce que c'est l'urbanisme d'aujourd'hui qui définit la société de demain, Monsieur le Président. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Honorable Ramcharan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm grateful for being granted the floor to intervene on the Town Planners Council bill. I equally thank the Acting Prime Minister, Minister of Housing and Land Use Planning, for introducing this bill in this August Assembly. From the very outset, I'm welcoming this legislation with much satisfaction and look forward to listening to the constructive feedback from other members as well. Mauritius, Mr. Speaker, sir, is the leading African powerhouse in terms of accountability, democratic institution, and good governance. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is imperative that the government continues on the path of establishing solid institutional frameworks to enhance the good governance practices within our country. Hence, the setting up of the Town Planners Council is a long-standing requirement to better structure and empower the professionals involved in the planning occupation. Planners throughout the globe have worked closely with the civil society and governments to create and manage our future villages, towns, and cities. Mr. Speaker, sir, the primary merit of this bill is that it recognizes planners' enormous contribution and their potential by utilizing the incoming Town Planners Council to recommend changes within the profession in order to ensure future resilience. Mr. Speaker, sir, the historical professional origins of town planners comes from the challenges of planning the European social housing reconstruction to avoid the expansion of slums. Mauritius imported town and country planning from the colonial French and British rulers and was bestowed with a vision of builders such as Maé de la Bourdonnais, Barthélemy David, and Robert Farquhar. However, our proud nation also produced leaders who were not professional planners themselves, but had far-reaching vision to change the very landscape of our towns and villages. Under the Prime Ministership of late Sir Anirudh Jagannath, our country's first miracle economic produced major infrastructural uplifts of our towns and villages across the island. Currently, under the Prime Ministership of Honorable Pravin Kumar Jagannath, our space, housing, transport, and community infrastructural planning has been revolutionized, hence equipping our nation with cutting edge infrastructure and amenities to support our socio-economic progress for the next 50 years, as mentioned by Honorable Boda, 50 years. Undoubtedly, this government, under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister, is, through this legislation, putting planners and planning at the forefront of our recovery and future development agenda. Mr. Speaker, sir, natural catastrophes are having an increasingly destructive impact on people and property. In the small island developing states, the SIDS, such as Mauritius, which has been acknowledged at the highest levels, as a result, the Honorable Prime Minister emphasized the necessity of being well prepared for future natural catastrophe by asking for increased coordination among international organizations and agencies to assist the SIDS countries, that is the small island development states, to prepare beforehand and aftermath of natural disasters. Mr. Speaker, sir, when a planning framework is backed up by legislation, it is inevitably rendered more effective. However, a possible barrier to obtaining effective and sustainable outcomes is established when there is discretion in the framework or legislation regarding the necessity to have or formulate plans. Retaining a planner's discretion over whether or not a framework can be eased, for example, means that attaining a complete and successful planning framework may have considerable gaps or inconsistencies. As a result, governments must guarantee that the legal framework promotes the correct implementation of the planning process, which is backed up by sound planning methodology. Mr. Speaker, sir, lessons learned from natural disasters may be at Chemin-Grenier, maybe in Chamonix, or even in Chemin-Grenier, Chamonix, or even Bamboo. These examples must be used to help our planners focus on their capabilities and responsibilities. This guarantees that planning requirements are implemented effectively, that development activities are monitored, and that planning regulations are appropriately enforced. Where plans are developed, they must be backed up by effective enforcement in order to ensure compliance and effectiveness. For example, in cities, rebuilding after disasters must be done with the appropriate approvals to guarantee that people rebuild properly. Furthermore, residents and private organizations must fully empower planning authorities. Hence, planning departments must be supported, strengthened, and given the freedom to do their jobs, with resources provided to educate individuals about the importance of adhering to the regulatory requirements of our country's formal planning processes. Consequently, the future Town Planners Council Bill will bridge the legislative and institutional gap by ensuring that planners have access to the most up-to-date frameworks and support in order to fully engage in our country's holistic space planning process. Mr. Speaker, sir, given the prevailing challenging international sanitary and economic condition, the introduction of the Town Planners Council Bill is even more warranted. In fact, rapid urbanization has rendered many old town planning methodologies, policies, and instruments outdated. The imperatives of poverty reduction, community empowerment, and creating possibilities for women in development have been slow to be recognized by planners. Planning practice has also not been sufficiently integrated into the information economy and informed by research. The Town Planners Council cannot bring about changes on its own, but it may serve as a hub for ideas, innovations, and mutual learning. Mr. Speaker, sir, planning has traditionally been a rather insular profession. Its institutions and operations have been traditionally derived from local government, national legislation, and nationally based professional bodies. Unfortunately, to a large extent, there has been a lack of internationalization of the perspectives. At a time when urban development is a critical driver of change globally, it is essential that we see beyond our borders. Hence, the future work of the Town Planners Council will demonstrate how an institution that embraces the diversity can act both regionally and internationally as an effective advocate for holistic planning. The Town Planners Council will also be able to leverage the strong institutional platforms such as the Commonwealth Association of Planners and UN Habitat. Indeed, there is a need to accentuate the regional, international, and SIDS cooperation, collaboration, and exchange. There exist a number of industry organizations which can be leveraged by planners to collectively materialize their contributions to the well-being of society. Mr. Speaker, sir, for any profession to constantly innovate and adapt to new professional and economic challenges, it is imperative, it is essential that they effectively listen to the pulse of the civil society. Hence, the Town Planners Council will be empowered to consult the civil society through consultative approaches that encourage civil society engagement through communication, participation, and inclusion. Mr. Speaker, sir, today's debates on the Town Planners Council Bill will undoubtedly create new opportunities to leverage the forthcoming Council. For instance, Council will be able to support the government with essential institutional support with respect to the gathering, interpretation, and usage of data after natural disasters. We also need their assistance in developing holistic regulations and legislations which support our sustainable long-term space planning aspirations by factoring in our cultural heritage and localized developmental requirements. Our adaptability to climate change and natural disasters is key, as well as the support from our civil society in the long-term value of adhering to the planning regulations. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, sir, one of the main objects of this bill is to uphold a high standard of professionalism and ethics among the planners' profession. The Town Planners Council will equally be empowered to encourage the development of internationally recognized educational and research facilities underpinned by the required standards in order to encourage the smooth movement of local and international planners, as well as to ensure the reciprocity of qualifications. Mr. Speaker, sir, we also look forward to the new Council's responsibility to uphold and sustain high professional ethical standards of conduct, as well as the generation and dissemination of good practices. Mr. Speaker, sir, given that for the new Town Planners Council, foreign planners will also be allowed to practice in Mauritius. And it is important, as I mentioned earlier, that reciprocity of qualifications is arranged. Our country indeed has a number of seasoned and promising planning professionals who should be given the full opportunity to provide their professional services abroad. For example, in South Africa, for instance, the Planning Council works closely with the South African Qualification Authority to determine local educational and professional competency standards, as well as works with the Foreign Planning Council to ensure foreign planners can smoothly practice in South Africa, and also for South Africans to be able to provide their services abroad. To conclude, Mr. Speaker, sir, through this bill, indeed, we are looking forward to leverage the Town Planners Council to further demonstrate the critical role of planning in helping secure a more resilient future for our citizens, especially those vulnerable to natural disasters and extreme weather events. Mr. Speaker, sir, hence it is essential that we pave diligently our country's way toward a sustainable urbanization in order to achieve a resilient, inclusive, and efficient economy. The Town Planning Council will thus be fully empowered to regroup, leverage, regulate, and initiate innovating ideas for the benefit of our population. I therefore fully support this bill and thank Honourable Acting Prime Minister for his diligence in presenting this bill tonight. I'm done, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you for affording me the opportunity to contribute to the Town Planners Council Bill. Mr. Speaker, sir, when Mauritius achieved independence in 1968, our economy was heavily reliant on sugarcane. Thanks to the vision of the father of the nation, Sir Sibsagar Ramgoolam, and other visionaries such as Professor Lim Fat, we managed to diversify our economy, and we created other economic pillars such as the export processing zone, tourism, and financial sector. Since independence, we have witnessed a significant industrialization process where more and more agricultural land has been put to non-agricultural use in the country's process of urbanization. Mr. Speaker, sir, significant changes are taking place in the economy, which will impact directly on the use of land, and this will continue to take place in the years to come. We are witnessing more and more mushrooming of morcellement and gated housing developments, particularly in the coastal areas. The restructuration of the agricultural sector, whereby large agricultural areas are being continuously converted for housing and industrial development, and the emergence of new poles of development such as the ICT sector has led to a new era in land use planning and development. All these changes have far-reaching consequences on the use of land in Mauritius. It is high time that our planners adopt a more professional approach in the wake of these developments. Coming to this bill, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is a matter of logic and common sense that each body of professionals needs a specific legal setup of its own in order to regulate registration, conduct, and discipline of its members. Just like the Bar Council for barristers, Medical Council for doctors, Dental Council for dentists, Law Society for attorneys, Chamber of Notaries for notaries, among others. The establishment of the Town Planners Council by virtue of Section 3 of this bill is indeed laudable initiative and thus is highly commendable. This is not the shadow of any doubt that this bill comes, though at a late stage, to fill a vacuum insofar as professional town planners are concerned. Mr. Speaker, sir, I would say better late than never. Mr. Speaker, sir, this bill should have been drafted in the light of the socio-economic development of Mauritius, on which I have elaborated in my introduction. Having gone through the legal provision of the bill, I feel duty-bound to highlight some shortcomings in the bill which I hope would be favorably considered before the bill passes to the voting stage. First of all, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like to draw the attention of the August House to Section 6B and 11, subsection 1 and 2 of the bill. It is my considered opinion that a blanket discretionary power is given to the Town Planners Council to set up as many committees that it may consider necessary for the discharge of its duties and function under the proposed bill. This uncontrolled discretionary power may well be the source of abuse of power and authority. Mr. Speaker, sir, some check and balances are warranted and call for Section 11, subsection 1 of the bill badly need an amendment to give the minister concerned the power to numerically control the setting up of committees by the Town Planners Council. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, sir, Section 11, subsection 2 of the bill read as follows. I quote, "A committee shall consist of not less than 3 members, and such other person as may be co-opted by the Council," unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, the bill is silent on the qualifications, experience, age, and nationality of the other persons who are eligible to be co-opted by the Council to sit on a committee which has been set by it. Mr. Speaker, sir, such unqualified terms used in a bill might open the floodgate of abuse and could even be the gateway to favorism and corrupt practices. Mr. Speaker, sir, I have some observation to make in respect of Section 7, subsection 1, A, B, and C of this bill, which deal with the composition of the proposed Town Planners Council. It is a cause of serious concern that none of these paragraphs lays down the specific criteria that will be taken into consideration during the process of selection of registered town planners, be it from the ministry concerned, or from the local government service, or from private practice, who will be called upon to sit on the proposed Town Planners Council. Not a single word, Mr. Speaker, sir, as to the qualification and/or proven experience and/or professional achievement of such planners. Mr. Speaker, sir, is it in consonance with the principle of good governance? Certainly not. Will this not trigger nepotism or favor the murder of meritocracy? I would like to voice out my opinion on Section 9, subsection 9 of the bill, which stipulates that, I quote, "Every member, including a co-opted member, shall be paid such fees and allowances as the council may determine," unquote. Will it be safe, Mr. Speaker, sir, to leave such power exclusively in the hand of the proposed council? Every power has to be accompanied by reasonable check and balances. May I know why no provision has been made for a droit de regard on these specific issues? If the council is swayed by an appetite to self-serve exorbitant fees and allowances, Mr. Speaker, sir, who will stop it? The bill is silent on this score. I humbly opine that an amendment is fully warranted with the words, open inverted commas, but subject to the approval of the attorney, of the accountant general, close inverted comma, just after the word determined. Mr. Speaker, sir, I would be failing in my duties as a member of this august assembly if I were to close my eyes on the section 7, subsection 1, F of the bill, which read as follows. The council shall consist of 2 persons who are not town planners to be appointed by the minister. Mr. Speaker, sir, what is the relevance and pertinence of this provision? Why persons not being town planners and those qualification, age, experience, and nationality are made irrelevant by this specific provision of the bill should sit on the Town Planners Council? Once again, Mr. Speaker, sir, such unchecked power given to the minister concerned could only lead to abuse, and this could also offend the sacrosanct principle of good governance. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am of the considered opinion that Section 7, subsection 2 of the bill invite precise consideration in view of the fact that it stipulates that the council shall elect a chairperson and a vice chairperson from among the members referred to in subsection 1, A, B, and C. This provision set no specific criteria as to the qualification and experience for election. It would appear that such election would be by majority vote only. At this stage, I find it pertinent, relevant, and material to read to the House Section 11, subsection 2A of the Law Practitioners Act 1984, Act 55 of 1984, which read as follows. The Council, meaning the Council of Legal Education, shall consist of A chairperson, who shall be a person who holds or has held judicial office, a law practitioner or a legal officer of not less than 10 years standing, or a person who has proven ability and experience in legal education to be appointed by the Chief Justice after consultation with the Attorney General and such other persons as he may be deemed fit. Mr. Speaker, sir, Parliament, in its wisdom, laid down precise and specific criteria for the appointment of the person eligible to be appointed as chairperson of the Council of Legal Education. So why this sound and wise reasoning cannot be applied insofar as the appointment of a chairperson and a vice chairperson of the Town Planners Council is concerned, why only the numerical criterion is favored? I humbly invite the Honourable Minister to revisit this bill and kindly consider bringing such amendment as he might consider relevant to make these paragraphs in harmony with the principle of good governance and meritocracy. Mr. Speaker, sir, over the last decade, the number of illegal construction and developments contrary to planning norms have been increased. The revision of existing legislation such as the Local Government Act, the Building Control Act, and the Town and Country Planning Act have hardly reduced the number of cases of illegal developments. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, sir, despite the computerization of the application system for building and land use permit had not given the desired effect. Applications are often delayed and rejected for trivial reasons as amendment during the processing phase cannot be undertaken on the existing National Electronic Licensing System of the Economic Development Board. Mr. Speaker, sir, almost every day I receive complaints from the public regarding their miseries when it comes to make an application for building and land use permit. I therefore expect that this bill also provides for a discussion and knowledge sharing platform among planners so that our country can move higher up in its development process. With this reward, Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank you for your attention.
Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you for allowing me to give my views on the Town Planners Council Bill, which is before this House today. At the very outset, I wish to stress that this important piece of legislation bears testimony of this government's will and determination to come forward with the necessary legal frameworks to allow professionals of different sectors to operate within the necessary parameters. And this obviously positively impacts on the development of our country. The House and the population at large will appreciate that since 1st of October, after its introduction, the debates and its adoption in this August Assembly, the CIDB Amendment Act has become in force and provides for a consolidated legal framework for the construction industry as well as for the registration process and the improvement of its operation. And this is just one example. Today, Mr. Speaker, sir, all across the world, towns and cities are witnessing major transformation. And this transition has brought significant transformation in the way people live, travel, work, and also in the way networks are built. Nowadays, all around the world, we talk about the integrated network of urban infrastructure, transport, and green spaces, among others. And it goes without saying that the key element of the planning is the location of people and their movement through the plan. Therefore, much emphasis must be laid on sustainability, high quality of public life, a sensitive approach to development for the success of the urban planning and execution. Mr. Speaker, sir, the world is developing at a rapid pace, and the Republic of Mauritius cannot lag behind. If we want to succeed, we have no choice but to put in place the necessary measures to meet our goals. This is why this government has taken the bold initiative to come forward with the Town Planners Council Bill. There is no doubt that regulating the profession of town planners will ensure that there is a standardization of the skills and knowledge required for the profession. The bill, which is before this House today, therefore provides for the setting up of a council to which powers will be vested to ensure that the professionals involved in town planning sector perform according to set standards and policies. Under the section related to the powers of the Council, it is clearly stipulated that the Council may, I quote, under Section 89(2)(b)(1) of the Constitution and subject to Part 4A of the Public Service Commission regulations, to inquire and report into any complaint of professional misconduct or negligence against a town planner appointed by the Public Service Commission. End of quote. What does this mean, Mr. Speaker, sir? This clearly means that the code of practice established by the Council will certify that all professionals will comply with the ethics and codes. Moreover, the Council will be able to assess the work of each professional, and if the latter failed to perform their duties correctly, they may face repercussions from the Council, and that will certainly help in guaranteeing that all professionals are always delivering quality work. But let us hope that those who every time see evil in everything this government does will not describe this bill and its provisions as a means of repression. In fact, this bill makes provision for the Council to be able to organize training programs and conferences which will guarantee that there is continuing professional development for the members. In addition to that, the Council may cooperate with other local or overseas institutions operating in the same field for training. This is no doubt an important aspect as it creates uniformity in the work of local and international professionals. Mr. Speaker, sir, we are all aware of the negative impacts and consequences of climatic change, coupled with the wrong decisions and badly planned development projects implemented by some people who were in government before us. With the looming danger of flash floods on the island, having certified professionals who can consider the effects of the topology of a location and the existing buildings will certainly decrease the occurrence of such a calamity. It is not a question of petty politics, but rather a question of human life, the security and life of our fellow citizens, Mr. Speaker, sir. Monsieur le Président, je suis certain que les membres de cette auguste Assemblée, les professionnels du secteur des infrastructures publiques et la population en général se souviendront des tristes épisodes où des inondations ont coûté la vie à plusieurs de nos concitoyens. Certes, nous n'avons aucun contrôle sur la nature, mais en tant que décideurs, il est de notre devoir et notre responsabilité de nous assurer que notre population ne paie pas le prix des projets mal inspirés et mal exécutés. Qui ne se souvient pas de l'aménagement de drains et de systèmes de canalisation, surtout dans la capitale, qui sont larges sur tout le parcours, mais étroits à l'embouchure, provoquant ainsi un refoulement de l'eau ou encore le bétonnage de certains endroits stratégiques. Ceux qui ont fauté devront répondre devant l'histoire. Mr. Speaker, sir, when we talk about town planning, let us not forget that traffic jam during peak hours yet is another recurring issue in Mauritius. This government has set its vision and major decongestion works have already started at strategic locations all across the island. For sure, the Metro Express project, which started with the track from Port Louis to Rose Hill, which has been extended to Catterbourne, and which will soon reach Cupip, has enormously contributed to the reduction of the number of vehicles on our roads during peak hours. But it is a fact that we cannot rest on our laurels and wait for the Metro Express project to alleviate the problem of congestion. Obviously, new roads need to be built. With the Town Planners Council Bill, the professionals from the Council can advise the authorities in the construction of new roads, which can lead to effectively reduce the time spent in traveling. Mr. Speaker, sir, I will not take much time of the House, and before concluding, I would like to underline one last aspect. It is undeniable that the past decades were marked with a rapid development, with skyscrapers being erected in almost all cities of Mauritius. This has greatly contributed to cause what we call urban heat island effect, which increases the ambient temperature in our cities. Hence, having certified professionals from the Council will help to avoid this phenomena to occur when planning for new towns. For all these reasons, which I have mentioned during my intervention, Mr. Speaker, sir, I fully support the Town Planners Council Bill, and I congratulate the Acting Prime Minister, Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Housing and Land Use Planning, Minister of Tourism, for coming forward with such a piece of legislation. Long live the Republic of Mauritius. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honourable François, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to congratulate and thank the Acting Prime Minister, Honourable Obigadu, and government for bringing this useful and important legislation which seeks to establish the Town Planners Council Bill number 19 of 2021. As a surveyor, planner, technician, myself, I will speak in support of this bill. Mr. Speaker, sir, the primary objects of the bill, as per Clause 4, shall to regulate and control the profession of town planners and to promote advancement in the field of town planning. This bill will strengthen the professions of planning, our planning system, and accountability of planners. Mr. Speaker, sir, our planning system is guided by the Town and Country Planning Act of 1954. In 2004, the then Minister of Housing and Lands, Honourable Lejongar, passed the Planning Development Act, PDA 2004, in this Assembly, which purports to repeal Act 6 of 1954, Act 2 of 1990, and Act 26 of 1995. The PDA 2004 is a fairly revolutionary piece of planning legislation based on the UK and Australian planning model, which unfortunately today is only partly in operation. If we want to make progress in the field of planning in our republic, there is urgency to revisit, adapt, amend, and update our planning and ancillary legislations to make them fully functional and effective. 1954, 2022, after more than 68 years, I'm glad to see that this Planners Council Bill will regulate the profession of planners and its members. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to thank the many planners of our Republic for the great impact of their recommendations on developments all around us to the healthy benefits of our country, despite there is more to be done. Here, I have in mind government planners such as Mr. Imu, Mrs. Sahai, and amongst others. And Mr. Speaker, sir, planning by its nature is about making decisions that balance the various elements related to people, culture, economy, natural and built environment. Our planning system is crucial in the efficient support of government efforts to deliver houses, jobs, and services needed to support our population and our economic growth, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic and the post-COVID-19 situation that will drive recovery. Today, industrial, agricultural, and housing pressures. And here, we are talking about construction of 12,000 affordable houses for vulnerable people. Ecological sustainability and climate change all require innovative planning responses in the area of land use and development to maintain and enhance livability while promoting the welfare of our people. In as far as agricultural land use planning is concerned, the need to give special consideration to the protection of prime and unique agricultural land is of paramount importance for food security and sovereignty for our country. And for its protection against flooding, as was the case a couple of weeks ago at Bois-Chéry, La Flora, and Rivière-du-Post. I'm concerned about Honorable Boda's argument that there is no more fertile land left in Mauritius. Mr. Speaker, sir, our National Development Strategy, prepared by Holcrow in 2003, stated, and I quote, "In tomorrow's Mauritius, there will be a need for more flexibility in planning to adapt to new circumstances quickly and to build on the opportunities offered by an increasingly global economy. Because of the significant and unpredictable changes that are taking place in the economy, a fresh look is needed at the way the nation's towns, countryside, and coast are planned and managed," unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is absolutely correct. As a matter of fact, planning is an evolutionary process which involves managing sustainably our societal progress from where it is now to where our country desires it to be in the future, let's say in 2050. Our planners will have to engage for new policy commitments and initiatives for our new national development strategy with an integrated approach in relation to development and planning in this new social and economic normality era of our built environment. The Honorable Acting Prime Minister mentioned a new national development strategy for the island of Mauritius to be finalized by the end of this year. May I ask him whether this exercise will be extended to road rigs, as it was the case in 2003 when Holcrow prepared the 2003 NDS for our Republic. Mr. Speaker, sir, future plans and visions for our country will require strategic and future-risk planners, and surely this will support same, as our actual planning process is planning from the parts to the whole, instead of planning from the whole to the parts in our Republic. The number of planners shall not be limited. Actually, there are only 80 planners. So government must look into providing more specialized scholarship quota for more planners, be it at graduate or postgraduate level, either at local or international institutions. Here I also played that Rodriguez in his development process to recruit more planners and development control officers to support its sustainable development. Mr. Speaker, sir, I also recall the legendary phrase of my good friend Honorable Babli, le centre d'évacuation pour venir de Manhattan. I guess he is deeply inspired by the present urban transport development of Vakwa Town. This is not a paradox. No, this is not a paradox. As Vakwa Town requires a regeneration and renaissance. I'm talking as a planner myself. And I have done some research about Manhattan, and I came across the Plan Manhattan project website for the town of Manhattan's growth policy titled Vision for Tomorrow, Solutions for Today. And the other phrase also that caught my mind, Phoenix, Provine, and New York. That is worth being noted. Mr. Speaker, sir, these are visions that go beyond 2050. And I guess decision makers and planners will need to rethink, reimagine, rebuild, revitalize, and redevelop Vakwa and Phoenix in the process of what we call reconstructing new towns in Mauritius. Time will tell us the truth. As per clause 22 of the bill, our planners will have to play the role of experts through continuous professional development in relation to new town planning techniques and changes in planning laws, guidelines, and standards. In the same vein, Mr. Speaker, Sir, Mauritius, as a tourism destination, will need to embark in consolidating its prestigious reputation in spatial planning for the future. Otherwise, things might become very challenging if we don't protect, preserve, and innovate for our natural and built environment. This concerns mainly our pristine coastal and beaches development. With, as Honorable Bernard said, there's no more past geometric today in Mauritius. Our planners must advise government to take drastic policies for no further development in these sensitive coastal zones, wetlands, sand dunes, and environmental sensitive areas. Mr. Speaker, sir, clause 5C of the bill ensures that the code of practice is complied with by town planners. This will encourage the revision of existing and the development of new codes and standards for planners and planning processes. Mr. Speaker, sir, over time, I have also witnessed of how planners are tasked through our planning system to achieving too many policy objectives to create a healthy and livable society. They are pulled in all directions, some which are contradictory. And balancing these objectives alongside private and political interests when producing local plans and deciding on planning applications, it became a difficult task. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Town Planners Council as an independent body, while promoting the profession and its responsibility, will be bound, firstly, to ensure that quality planning decision entails no conflict of interest through discipline, honest, fair, transparent, and in the best interest of our Republic. And more importantly, it must be depoliticized planning decisions, whatever the size of development. This should be through a multidisciplinary and collaborative approach between planners and other professionals like surveyors, engineers, architects, environmentalists, developers, and politicians like us to find solutions and best practices. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to quote a paragraph of my response to the Disaster Risk Management Bill 2016, where I say, and I quote, Madam Speaker, coming to development and planning, disaster risk is spatial in nature and is interconnected with development and planning. I said so in 2016. Floodings, for example, we have witnessed in our Republic unsustainable development, sometimes unplanned urbanizations, environmental degradation, and inappropriate land use through local examples such as what we witnessed at Port Louis, mentioned by Honorable Dahlia, Canal d'Ariot, Fond du Sac, Mongou floodings, and Chictrac Route landslide. These are just a few examples, unquote. Secondly, this Town Planning Council will have to propose on the how to significantly simplify and decrease the time it takes for developments to go through the planning process and permit to use land at different levels of government. The actual planning process is way too long and cumbersome and should not frustrate development, but rather to facilitate and accelerate development to make people's life better. The impact of this process is reflected in the number of permit applications approved and delivered, as well as the number of planning contraventions delivered in our Republic. It will be interesting to know what is the latest figure of permit delivered per year, either by the ministry or at local government level. Mr. Speaker, sir, our land use planning system must create places and communities that are more resilient to chronic stresses of climate change and episodic shocks such as floods. This will be in line, Honorable Kamano, with our updated nationally determined contribution, NDC, submission to the United Nations Framework on Climate Change at COP26. With regards to climate change, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Planning Institute of Australia believes that planners working for different levels of government or in the private sector have a responsibility to integrate planning for climate change into their work and to be proactive in the development of mitigation and adaptation strategies to avoid harm and negative impacts to present and future ecosystems, human and non-human populations. A couple of weeks ago, heavy amount of rainfall has again tested our planning system with unprecedented flooding at Long Hill, Bellon. I read that in the press. Despite the fact that our republic is presently witnessing huge number of drains projects being implemented through government commitment by NDU and the Land Drainage Authority under the leadership of Honourable Minister Hariram and my honourable colleagues, PPSs. In that regard, it is imperative for us to complete the Land Drainage Master Plan for the whole Republic, which will be a crucial tool for planners and other professionals. My colleague, Honourable Leopold, at PQ 423 today, timely asked the Honourable Minister as to where matters stand with regards to its completion in Rorex, being given the topographical complexity of Rorex and its necessity for future development of Rorex. Mr. Speaker, sir, further, my question is, what is the actual economic cost of natural disasters as well as bad planning in our Republic today? I refer to a report, the Australian Deloitte Access Economic Report of 2017, stipulated that the simulated cost of natural disasters in the state of New South Wales was calculated to be 3.6 billion Australian dollars for 2017, and to be significantly increased on a yearly basis due to climate change, increasing quantity and severity of weather events. In our case, some weeks ago, Honourable Ramano, during a site visit at Saint-Martin Coastal Development Project, responded on how good planning is essential to mitigate and adapt to climate change along coastal region, and is much less costly and more effective than retrofitting. Here I have to say planners' role is decisive through this approach to reduce costs for over vulnerable places around our Republic. Mr. Speaker, sir, to conclude, I'm thankful to have contributed to this Town Planners Council Bill, which will regulate the profession of planners. This bill will, amongst others, ignite our planners to create a new model for planning in a changing climate that support collaboration and partnership approaches across public, private, and community sectors and across disciplines. As I said, surveyors, architects, and viewers. Our planners, as climate leaders, will have to encourage sustainable land use planning, management, and development in our Republic. Mr. Speaker, sir, planners, when valued and work together, can make a big difference in our society, and its role will become central in helping to shape our future. And the next target and vision is our Republic in 2050. This Planning Council Bill will consolidate this endeavour. With these words, Mr. Speaker, sir, I also commend the bill to the House, and I thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
MP Mia.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Et après avoir entendu mon bon ami, l'honorable Francisco François, disait à l'effet que Vacoa allait devenir Manhattan et que Phoenix allait devenir New York, je m'attendais à ce qu'ils nous disent que Port-Maturin allait devenir San Francisco, mais tel n'a pas été le cas, Monsieur le Président. Laissez-moi, merci de m'avoir donné l'occasion d'intervenir sur le projet de loi du Conseil de l'urbanisme. Et bien sûr, j'aurais aimé. j'aurais aimé. Donc, Monsieur le Président, l'objet de ce projet de loi est de prévoir la création du Conseil des urbanistes de Maurice en vue de mieux réglementer la profession d'urbaniste et de prévoir la pratique de la discipline des urbanistes. Le projet de loi prévoit donc le Conseil enregistrera, entre autres, les urbanistes, réglementer la profession d'urbanisme, exercer et maintenir la discipline et la profession d'urbanisme, et aussi promouvoir le progrès dans le domaine de l'urbanisme. Et pour ma part, Monsieur le Président, je m'attarderai beaucoup sur le dernier point que je viens de mentionner. Et aussi, le projet de loi contient que le Conseil pourra organiser ou faire organiser des cours de formation, des programmes de conférences, des séminaires et des conférences, y compris des cours de programmes de perfectionnement professionnel continu à l'intention des urbanistes. Le projet de loi, Monsieur le Président, prévoit également l'enregistrement des entreprises locales et étrangères d'urbanistes à Maurice. Et là, Monsieur le Président, aux clauses 26 du projet de loi, ce projet de loi autorise les firmes étrangères de s'implanter à l'île Maurice sans un accord de co-entreprise avec des homologues locaux. Donc, Monsieur le Président, il n'y aura aucun filet de protection de notre industrie locale, y compris ses employés professionnels et les entreprises qu'il crée. Un partenariat entre les firmes mauriciennes et étrangères aurait aidé à se maintenir et à développer contre la concurrence déloyale des étrangers proposant de s'installer à Maurice pour offrir des services à un client local. La co-entreprise contribue également à promouvoir le transfert de technologies, offre une sécurité à long terme aux clients mauriciens, qu'ils soient publics ou privés, et contre toute négligence professionnelle potentielle après l'achèvement du projet. Dans le scénario ci-dessus, il appartient aux partenaires mauriciens de l'entreprise commune de mettre en place la part de la responsabilité interne au sein de l'entreprise commune et en particulier ce qui concerne le maintien de la couverture de responsabilité professionnelle correspondante pendant la durée requise. Il en résulte une situation gagnant-gagnant. L'urbaniste local gagne et l'étranger aussi, et les clients locaux, c'est-à-dire toutes les parties. Je comprends parfaitement le nouvel ordre mondial, la facilité de faire les affaires, la mondialisation et les conséquences nécessaires pour que notre pays s'ouvre au reste du monde. Notre pays est en effet une économie libre, à en juger par le nombre de commerçants étrangers de nos métiers et dans notre sol local au cours de ces 30 à 40 dernières années. Toutefois, Monsieur le Président, on ne peut ignorer le fait que nous avons le statut plutôt de petits États insulaires en développement. C'est-à-dire, nous sommes et nous restons un petit pays à l'économie, dont l'économie est petite et quelque peu fragile, où une dose de protectionnisme est nécessaire pour empêcher la destruction totale de notre fragile tissu économique. Monsieur le Président, les chiffres parlent d'eux-mêmes. Les investisseurs étrangers sont par définition souvent des grandes entreprises, comptant des employés par centaines, voire des milliers, ayant des bureaux dans plus d'un pays et pourraient facilement sous-coter les prix, mettant parfois nos entreprises locales à genoux et les envoyant dans l'oubli. Une mesure qui va bouleverser le secteur local, déjà fortement touché par la pandémie. Nous devons être conscients de ne pas ouvrir nos portes aux étrangers et affluer, et par conséquent mettre nos professionnels locaux au chômage. Monsieur le Président, je fais le point par rapport aux aux étrangers qui vont venir s'implanter à Maurice. Now, Mr. Speaker, let me move on to clause 17 of the bill, whereby I quote, "No liability, civil or criminal, shall be incurred by the Council. Any member of the Council, the Registration Board, or a committee, or any officer in respect of any act done or omitted by him or him in good faith in the discharge of its or his functions or exercise of its or his powers under this act." Monsieur le Président, with powers comes responsibilities. What about negligence? What about being negligent? The Public Accounts Committee has recently tabled its report. There are so many cases of misuse of public funds, of misappropriation of public funds, of negligence. The law cannot continue to protect those who have been found responsible of negligence. I think this clause of the bill, that is protection from liability, clause 7, should be revisited, Mr. Speaker, sir. Maintenant, Monsieur le Président, lorsque nous parlons de l'urbanisme, nous devrions également penser au développement durable. Vous conviendrez sûrement avec moi sur ce point, Monsieur le Président, que peu de choses ont été faites ou ont été faites dans la promotion du développement durable dans l'industrie de la construction. Il y a beaucoup de questions soulevées dans le développement urbain, dans l'environnement. C'est ce qu'on appelle l'expansion urbaine non planifiée. Monsieur le Président, les embouteillages dans les artères principales, les accidents de la route, la largeur insuffisante des routes pour augmenter la population des véhicules, le système de gestion du trafic médiocre sont quelques-uns des problèmes liés aux infrastructures routières. Certains diront que ce sont les questions que les ingénieurs de la circulation ou les gestionnaires de transport doivent traiter. Mais la gestion des transports relève également de la planification. De plus, l'émission des véhicules, les gaz à effet de serre créent une pollution atmosphérique et les îlots de chaleur urbains, ce qui a de lourds impacts sur les zones urbaines. Une mauvaise entretien du drainage, les inondations urbaines, l'élimination des déchets chimiques et solides dans les plans d'eau intérieurs créent une pollution de l'eau et des plans d'eau morts au milieu des villes. Cela crée beaucoup de problèmes environnementaux, d'épidémies, ainsi que de réduction des valeurs esthétiques. Tout cela crée donc de lourds problèmes à long terme où la planification est indispensable pour prévenir les événements désastreux. Monsieur le Président, il y a de nombreux défis à relever. Et le planificateur doit avoir des compétences spéciales et de diverses disciplines et idées. Divers concepts ont été adoptés par les villes pour qu'ils puissent surmonter les défis. Et quelques-unes des exemples, c'est des villes vertes. Les efforts de planification devraient être déployés pour promouvoir les modèles locaux d'utilisation et de transport de terre qui encouragent le développement des transports à émissions zéro ou à faible émission de carbone. Les infrastructures éco-énergétiques, les initiatives des gouvernements locaux qui encouragent les orientations à faible consommation d'énergie et à zéro carbone. L'importance de la verdure doit également être identifiée et les projets de régénération urbaine visant à restaurer les parcelles environnementales si nécessaire sont également indispensables. Monsieur le Président, les planificateurs ont pour tâche ici de rendre les villes plus vivables avec les ressources existantes. C'est ce qu'on appelle les villes inclusives. Pour ce faire, le développement compact est suggéré pour faciliter l'urbanisation tout en intégrant les services urbains et infrastructures dans la localité spécifiée. Les investissements axés sur les infrastructures locales, les installations communautaires, les transports, les infrastructures de transport, l'habitat et les abris, ainsi que le soutien aux moyens de subsistance et au commerce. Pour devenir des villes inclusives, la planification devrait fournir des transports publics de qualité et à haute capacité, reliant les gens à l'emploi et à un développement abordable, à haute densité et à usage mixte. Monsieur le Président, laissez-moi parler par rapport au partenariat pour le progrès urbain avec le secteur privé. Le développement des villes nécessite des investissements haut de gamme, des flux de capitaux pour rendre les villes durables à l'avenir. Pour ce faire, le secteur public ne peut pas financer lui-même, de sorte que l'encouragement du secteur privé est également une tâche de l'urbaniste. Avec le gain économique, l'équilibre entre la nature et le développement est une tâche de l'urbanisme moderne qui nécessite des compétences en gestion pour prouver la logique aux investisseurs privés. L'État devrait donc fournir des concessions fiscales, l'approvisionnement des matières premières, des installations de transport à faible coût, des autoroutes, des ponts, des aéroports situés à proximité pour le développement du secteur privé. Entre autres, ils sont nécessaires pour convaincre de fournir des espaces urbains, des installations de loisirs et de logements, ainsi que des emplois locaux comme équilibre entre la croissance économique des villes et la durabilité. Outre ce qui précède, les planificateurs ont la responsabilité de gérer le développement en surveillant la croissance et en évaluant son impact sur la société dans son ensemble et en maintenant la compétitivité de la ville avec un scénario global. L'intervention des planificateurs et la pensée novatrice sont les plus importantes. Le développement devrait être guidé sur la base des concepts suivants, tels que les partenariats avec les parties prenantes, l'établissement des liens avec les régions. Pour terminer, Monsieur le Président, parmi les stratégies, le rôle des planificateurs sera la partie intégrante pour traiter les problèmes à venir avec une pensée visionnaire. Pour faire face aux défis à venir, le planificateur doit toujours être orienté vers l'avenir et prendre des risques et prendre des décisions confiantes. Les décisions de l'urbanisme ne doivent pas s'orienter vers les exemples de l'Ouest ou d'une nation développée. La stratégie devait découler d'une planificateur lui-même avec le développement de la base culturelle existante. Les défis doivent être affrontés avec les exemples de l'environnement familier des gens, pas un concept aliéné. Mais le véritable défi est de mettre en œuvre les concepts disponibles au niveau du sol, c'est-à-dire à l'île Maurice. La plupart des cas, les planificateurs ont échoué dans la mise en œuvre, mais cela ne doit être fort pour faire face et créer un meilleur moyen de subsistance pour la communauté urbaine en développement. Ainsi, les compétences de planificateurs devraient entièrement se concentrer sur le comportement pratique des personnes et l'application du concept de changement dans une phase plus absorbante. Monsieur le Président, j'ai terminé.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Before I start, let me thank the Honorable Acting Prime Minister for bringing this bill, which is going to provide for the establishment of the Town Planners Council of Mauritius, and with a view to better regulate the profession of town planners. To understand the importance of this bill, Mr. Speaker, sir, we must understand the profession of town planning. We must understand that with this bill, we are entering a new and exciting era for planning, development, and regeneration in this country. An era which will put town planners in the driving seat as recognized professionals. Some honorable members mentioned that the word professional is missing. So just like the medical council, there is no mention of the word professional, but we all know that we are talking here of professionals of development and regeneration of our urban and rural areas. And from what I have heard and read, I'm of the opinion that not only here, but globally, people don't have a clear understanding of the profession of town planning. When I started my degree in quantity surveying 3 decades ago, The very first module I had to undertake was town planning. It's from there that I realized that town planning contributes to sustainable, inclusive, and thriving communities and harmonizes environmental, social, cultural, and economic well-being. Robert Owen is considered to be one of the early town planners. He was, in fact, not a town planner, but he was a businessman and wanted his employees to have a happy life. He believed that for his workers to be happy, they need to live in a pleasant environment, and he came with the idea of Garden City. It's through his idea of Garden City that Robert Owen brought the radical social reform and established the correlation between workers' well-being and profitability. This bill, Mr. Speaker, sir, is the need of the hour for a new era. When I say that this bill will set a new era, it is simply because the town planners will be now regarded as a separate profession from architects, engineers, quantity surveyors, and other professionals of the construction, real estate, and property development. After that, the architects, the engineers, the quantity surveyors, land surveyors, and the real estate agents, now it is a time for the town planners to have their own council. Town planners, we have the tendency to think that they plan the future. But in fact, the profession of town planning embodies a much wider sector. For instance, they protect our coastline and historic buildings. They generate declining places and create new environment. We can also say that they preserve the best of the past and promote innovation so that the town and buildings of the future will continue to meet our needs. It is the art of giving shape, design, and structure to cities and towns of the planet. In fact, towns and cities are the results of decisions taken by men and government. When talking of men, Mr. Speaker, sir, this bill is a tribute to those great men who contributed to shape this world of today. We should today remember men like Giambattista Nolli, who planned cities without a focal point. Ebenezer Howard for the free magnets theory. Hugh Ferris for the setback principle, who in 1916 turned the focus of planning from horizontal to vertical setback so as to cater for light obstruction created by skyscrapers. Frank Lloyd for Broadcast City, the Swiss Le Corbusier for Radiant City, Kevin Lynch for psychogeography in town planning, where they started involving people in what they call the bottom to top principle. Today here in this August Assembly, we are recognizing the contribution of these unsung heroes by bringing regulatory framework for professionals of that sector, so that the activities and field of operation is linked to the economic systems so that it make it reflective in policy making of the booms and slump which are enduring characteristics of the property market. This bill provides for the necessary legal framework to bring the profession of town planning in Mauritius in line with the international standards, norms, and practices, and help to better regulate town planning services in Mauritius and establish a Town Planners Council which will be aligned with the Royal Town Planning Institute of United Kingdom. While going through the sections of the bill, I can say that it is going to be a major piece of legislation underpinning urban development in Mauritius and will be considered as fundamental legal framework governing the built environment. Let me take a few provisions of the bill. Section 20, for example, it concerns the registration of town planners. This bill gives recognition to the Royal Town Planning Institute of United Kingdom. The Royal Town Planning Institute exists since 1914 and was awarded the Royal Charter in 1959. It has a roll of 25,000 members. So the section 20 subsection 3 of the bill provides for exemption to town planners already registered with the Royal Town Planning Institute and also with other similar institutes. They can have sort of direct membership. Section 22, Mr. Speaker, sir, is about the CPD, that is the continuing professional development. This bill makes CPD a mandatory requirement for registration. CPD is a commitment by members of professional bodies to continually update their skills and knowledge in order to remain professionally competent. Professionals operate in a constantly changing environment, for example, new legislation, so it is expected that professionals ought to be competent in order to provide the best possible service. Therefore, CPD is important for professionals to remain updated. The bill makes provision that the registered town planners are in constant alignment with new town planning techniques and method of management, changes in planning law, planning guidelines and standards, or any other matter related to the profession of town planners. CPD allows professionals to realize that they are not in a comfortable groove all the time, and that shall ensure that they continue to be proficient and competent in their profession, while also getting furnished with essential skills that could help them to progress. Honorable Osman Mohammed mentioned that there are less and less CPD events organized nowadays, but there are several free webinars available for professionals to which they can easily access via the internet. Section 27 is about the preliminary investigation, and the bill provides that whenever there is a necessity for an investigation, the Council can have recourse to professionals with the required expertise on the matter of dispute, and as is provided under the Section 89(2)(b) of our Constitution, the Council can have recourse to that and appoint a professional for a proper and fair determination. Mr. Speaker, sir, the bill is about professionals. So planners will be expected to plan, and Dr. Navin Rambulam will not have to go in the forest of Ferne to find alternative routes, as mentioned by Honorable Mohammed. It concerns the empowerment of professionals. Mr. Speaker, sir, there are actually a lot of talks on women empowerment, but only words and no deeds is like a garden, plenty of weeds. This bill, Mr. Speaker, sir, is empowering women. I mentioned earlier that town planners are part of the professionals of the built environment. The professionals of the built environment are mostly men. However, compared to architects, engineers, and others, that town planning has a high ratio of women. These women are already holding high-level posts. The chief, as mentioned by my colleague previously, Dr. Honorable Ramdani, that the chief town and county planning officer at the Ministry of Housing is a lady. The two deputy chiefs are also ladies. The chief technical officer of the ministry is also a lady who has done her studies in town planning. And about 30% of the town planners as the local authorities are ladies. There are also several other ladies who have BSc in town planning, but not performing the job of town planning. So as we can see, we are indirectly empowering women. We should also not forget that it is this government which appointed a lady as the chairperson of the Construction Industry Board for the first time a few years back. Who knows, the Town Planning Council may become the first such council where the first chairperson will be a lady. You may be aware, Mr. Speaker, sir, that a small drop of lime juice can spoil a whole big pot of milk. And it's unfortunate that, as usual, the honorable members of the opposition did that again. Honorable Osman Mohammed came with the same argument that this government is coming with institutions to nominate our people at the head of these institutions. Even Honorable Wuchit went in the same directions. They came with that argument when we debated on the Tax Operators Welfare Bill, the Real Estate Bill, Cyber Security and Cybercrime Bill, Children's Bill, IBA Amendment Bill, Recreational Council Bill, the same gisraye. For me, Mr. Speaker, sir, our people, we mean people who are patriots, who got the same vision as our government, and people who are consistent. Whenever we come with bills so as to implement the framework for a modern Mauritius, to take our Mauritius to new heights, what do we hear from the other side? That the timing is not appropriate.
Eh bien, Monsieur le Président, il n'y a pas d'heure pour les braves. Et nous sommes des braves. Notre équipe ici va braver cette période difficile. We are going to do all that's needed for the welfare of our citizens. And let me remind this House that 100% of the citizens of Mauritius are our people. One last point, Mr. Speaker, sir. You know, this opposition, which is only criticizing, you know, in 2013, they brought the Professional Quantity Surveying Council bill. And you know what? The section 7 of that bill, which is about composition of the council, subsection 1 mentions the following. The council shall consist of 4 professional quantity surveyors to be appointed by the minister, from among quantity surveyors posted at the ministry, a municipal city council or municipal town council, a statutory corporation or a government company. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, there were no quantity surveyors posted as a municipality at that time, and even now we don't have any. So at that time, there came bills with flaws. Everything was good. They had nothing to say. This bill that we are proposing, Mr. Speaker, sir, is proposing people that do exist. We are proposing 4 planners from the ministry, 3 planners from the Ministry of Local Government, 2 planners from the private practice who will be elected to form part of the council. And to conclude, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like to express my appreciation that this bill is bringing the much required framework which will foster the recognition of town planners in the contribution for a sustainable development, well-planned and well-managed cities, and ultimately provides a dynamism that the professionals of town planners deserve to build our country. The bill empowers town planners to deliver, to make these great places nice to live, work and happy, not just now, but for generations to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Deputy Prime Minister, you can wind up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me begin by, as is the practice, by commending both sides of the House for the interventions we have heard. Let me thank interveners for their participation, but also let me thank those who are still with us at this late hour for their presence. The large number of backbenchers of the majority and the very few members of the opposition who have deemed it necessary to accompany us as we debate and vote on this important bill. We have heard from, just a word to say that Honourable Uchit did mention that he had a personal predicament, and I can appreciate that. He could not stay on with us. Let me thank you, Mr. Speaker, for being receptive to suggestions on both sides of the House that we should finish at one go rather than breaking for dinner, which would have led us to be here until very late tonight. We have had the benefit of hearing from professionals in the area of land use and construction. We've heard from engineers, we've heard from quantity surveyors, we've heard from planners, and from others, just like myself, although we have no direct professional involvement in this area, bear a keen interest in the work performed by planners. This bill was not meant to usher a general debate about town and country planning. Some have chosen to broaden the debate to discuss the importance of planning, the why and how of planning in the present and the modern era, and the philosophy of planning that should guide government in future. So be it. The tone of the debates has been very interesting. A lot of positive comments and suggestions. from this side of the House, for which I'm very grateful. Unfortunately, as pointed out by the last speaker, some usual negative comments from the opposition, as if being in the opposition, one has to find something negative to say. Otherwise, one is not doing one's job as an opposition MP. That's most unfortunate. But I wish to commend Honourable Buddha, who offered us a very interesting intervention. He did not feel the need to be negative. Au contraire, l'ayant entendu, je me suis dit qu'il doit amèrement regretter sa décision de quitter la majorité pour passer dans l'opposition. Voyez-vous, Monsieur le Président, pour avoir appartenu durant, j'ai envie de dire, toute ma vie au MMM, qui est le parti d'opposition par excellence, je sais que quand on est dans l'opposition, on est dans le dire et jamais dans le faire. On est contraint par le registre de l'oral. On exerce la parole. Des discours à l'Assemblée, des conférences de presse, des meetings et des réunions, Covid permettant. Mais si l'on veut passer du dire au faire, si l'on veut passer de la théorie à la pratique pour servir le pays, pour servir le peuple, pour être dans le concret et faire avancer les choses, il faut bien être au gouvernement. Et c'est pour ça que c'est avec beaucoup de regret que j'ai entendu mon ancien collègue et ami, monsieur le député Boda, qui aujourd'hui se voit limité à des propositions au Parlement, alors que ces propositions, il aurait pu les avoir exprimées au gouvernement et aujourd'hui encore avoir contribué avec nous à façonner le réel plutôt que d'être uniquement dans le dire. Mais enfin, la vie, elle est faite de choix, parfois des choix malheureux. Et c'est évident dans le cas présent. Peut-être sincère, mais malheureux. Mr. Speaker, I'm duty-bound to respond to the points that have been made, and I will ask my colleagues to bear with me as I attempt to do so. I'll go very quickly, I hope, one by one, addressing the comments made essentially by the opposition, but also a comment made on this side of the House. Now, Honourable Mohammed first asked a question, why have we removed the term professional? Well, because everybody realises that town planners are professionals. Just as for the Medical Council, you don't say the Professional Medical Practitioners Council, or for the bar, you wouldn't say the Professional Lawyers or Barristers Council. There was no need, in our opinion, to maintain this term professional. The composition of the council, which has been the subject of criticism on the part of the opposition, is explained by the numbers presented to me by professionals in the area. I also asked why this ratio of, I believe it is 4 to 3 to 2. Well, simply because, all in all, we have approximately 80 planners in Mauritius. 35 belong to the civil service. They are employed by government. 24 belong to local authorities, and 20 are in the private sector. So the issue is not about the importance, as suggested by Honorable Amia of the importance of the private sector in development. We all realize this. But the issue is how can we be fair? This is not a body about promoting development. This is a body to regulate and assist in the development of the profession. It is a professional council. Now, question was asked, why do we have 2 members who are not planners? Well, because town planning is multidisciplinary, as pointed out by Honorable Buddha, Honorable Nakchedi. Many town planners come from different areas and decide to go on to planning. Just as many planners, as in the case of Honorable Buddha, go on to other spheres of professional activity while maintaining their interest in planning. So the idea was to have 2 representatives of civil society. And obviously, one would have to choose persons who can contribute. They might be municipal councillors or district council members. They might be professionals. They might be persons who have experience. We shall see. We shall see, but the idea is to enrich the thinking and the working of the council by having representatives of civil society. Honorable Osman also said, but 2 years of professional practice, we should have said, understudying a registered town planner. But at this point in time, we have no registered town planners. So that could be mentioned at a later stage. But this is a first step, and we need to start somewhere. And what matters now is that town planners who seek registration have had some experience. The definition of town planning, I must say, reflects the international legislation governing such councils that we have seen. And in fact, the Planning and Development Act of 2004 does not have a definition of town planning. So we don't believe that the present definition is in any way restrictive and will fetter the ability of the council to undertake its work and fulfill its mandate. Should we have called this council the Town and Country Planners Council? Should we have called it the LEND? I think it was called the LEND Planners. I prefer the formula suggested by Honorable Buddha, but in international usage, town planners, it understood by and large to mean all that has been suggested. In any event, again, it is a matter of regret. This bill has been circulated since very, very long. And the point of circulating a bill at first reading, a couple of weeks before it is debated at second reading, is precisely to allow everybody and anybody, be it a member of Parliament or interested parties outside Parliament, to react and to voice criticism if needs be, or to make proposal if needs be. And some of these proposals, had they been communicated earlier, maybe could have been taken on board. But of course, at the 11th hour, that is not possible. And in years to come, legislators, maybe ourselves, maybe others who will succeed us in this House, will have ample opportunity to improve upon the present legislation. Now, the National Land Development Strategy is not really the subject matter we are debating today. But for the sake of informing the House, let me say this is an extremely important exercise. So important that honestly, as Minister, I do not mind if it takes another 6 months or another year. It has been very much hampered by COVID, with the foreign consultants not being able to travel to Mauritius. And I believe this team of experts is Australian, and the borders of Australia have been closed. Yes, they can work online, but physical presence in this case is necessary. So we'll take the time needed, hopefully before the end of this year, we will be ready with a draft. I do intend, however exasperated that might make my officers who've been working on this for years, but I do intend to consult yet again. The first draft has been on the website. So all NGOs, everybody wishing to contribute, could and can still contribute. But nonetheless, I will organize a presentation, and I do undertake, Mr. Speaker, to invite members on the other side of the House. When I tried to do this with a national housing strategy, it was boycotted by the opposition. But given their comments today, we will again invite them. And we shall see if they do choose to come and contribute. My friend, the honourable member from Rodrigue, raised the issue as to whether the National Land Development Strategy also refers to Rodrigue. Now, my understanding is that the Rodrigues Regional Assembly had commissioned its own development strategy. Unfortunately, I have not been able to confirm this right now, but I seem to recollect that there has been a separate initiative that we respect in the spirit of autonomy, so that the specificity of Rodrigue is appropriately, adequately addressed. But again, we are open to proposals and suggestions. Now, another point made by Honourable Osman concerned the need for an institute of planners to meet CPD needs. Well, the Council precisely is there to meet CPD needs. We're talking of a small profession of 80 planners. If we go on to create a second institution, what will the opposition say? Here they go again. Jobs for the boys, wasting public funds, multiplicating institutions. So we chose not to do that. Let us start with the Council, and as it moves forward, we shall gather experience. And if there is a need for a specialized body, we'll do so. But let me remind members of the House that the University of Mauritius does offer undergraduate courses in this area. In fact, the university runs two courses, a diploma course in town and country planning, as well as a 3-year BSc course in town and country planning. Some 95 students have completed their studies at the University of Mauritius, and let us commend the university for playing their role. Out of the 95, 26 are employed at my ministry and 23 in local authorities. Last year, 23 students graduated with a diploma in town and country planning, and they are all working or following a top-up course. For instance, the BSc. So, yes, Mr. Speaker, there is ongoing training provided by educational institutions in our country. There are scholarships in the past offered by the Australian government and the British government that have benefited some 12 officers of my ministry. And since 2017, we are also in receipt of scholarships from China, and 5 officers have already trained at postgraduate level in town planning in China. So the Institute will come, if it needs to, at a later stage. Honourable Osman referred to LAVIMS. I don't want to delay matters here by going into details of LAVIMS, but we were very interested to learn of the contribution of Honourable Osman Mohammed to the development of LAVIMS. Congratulations to you, sir, for that. Now, but what I did not appreciate was the criticism levelled at planners. This was not, I believe, Mr. Speaker, the occasion to attack planners for not providing the required setback having regard to flooding, not providing the setback for neighboring properties, construction, accepting signature de complaisance, allowing developers to respect the 40% requirement at ground floor and then to build. This bill really is the opportunity to pay homage to our planners for all they have contributed to the development of our country, but not to have a barrage of criticism against planners. I think we can do that elsewhere on another occasion. This was not the forum and the occasion. However, reference was made to post-COVID planning, and I welcome that. I think the point was made by Honourable Osman Mohamed, but also by Honourable Buddha, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, post-COVID planning is a new concept, and we are, as this concept develops, trying to take on board all the complexities but potential of post-COVID planning, as we know that our planet and humanity will remain at risk of emerging viruses that will threaten our very existence. So be it for the points raised by Honourable Osman Mohamed, whom I thank for his contribution. Monsieur le député Boda a soulevé certainement plusieurs points fort pertinents dont nous tiendrons compte dans l'avancement de ce projet de création d'un Town Planners Council. La nécessité d'avoir une carte des terres agricoles essentielles à préserver, à protéger, oui, je conçois que le National Land Development Strategy a pour objectif précisément d'aborder les impératifs de l'aménagement du territoire à l'avenir, mais déjà, dans le fait, c'est le cas. C'est le cas, et j'en fais l'expérience, moi, au quotidien, lorsque nous avons approché le ministère de l'Agriculture pour obtenir des terres de l'État pour des programmes de construction sociaux, je peux témoigner de la ténacité du ministère de l'Agro-Industrie cherchant à protéger les terres agricoles et les terres forestières, si je puis ainsi m'exprimer. Donc, dans les faits, monsieur le député, c'est déjà le cas, mais je suis tout à fait en accord avec vous. La National Land Development Strategy ce sera bien sûr le point de départ même, face aux impératifs économiques, sociaux, écologiques de l'avenir, prendre comme point de départ ce qui doit être préservé pour assurer le succès de notre modèle de développement. Plusieurs des intervenants de l'opposition ont parlé des étrangers qui viendraient travailler à Maurice. Il faudra là encore trouver le juste équilibre. C'est le même débat qui se pose dès lors qu'on discute de l'avenir des juristes, des médecins, de tous les professionnels. Nous vivons à l'heure de la mondialisation. Nous devons nous ouvrir pour accueillir des compétences étrangères, mais en même temps, il faut évidemment assurer un certain degré de protection, je n'aime pas utiliser le terme, mais de nos professionnels. Donc il faut constamment trouver le juste équilibre mais la situation sera dynamique. Il faudra constamment redéfinir ce qu'est le juste équilibre, mais nous sommes très attentifs à cet argument. D'ailleurs, ce que prévoit le projet de loi, c'est que cette institution, le Council, pourra déterminer les conditions de l'enregistrement des étrangers qui voudront pratiquer à Maurice. Donc l'idée énoncée de co-entreprise, je crois était le terme utilisé par monsieur le député Adir Mia, bien évidemment. C'est quelque chose que demain l'on pourrait considérer. Honorable Uchit referred to the need for the minister to control creation of committees. Of course, this institution will be attributed a budget, and the budget will determine what it can and cannot do. So any such statutory body is not free to set up as many committees as it wants and spends as much money as it wants. It is limited by a budget. It is also, there is an oversight by the parent ministry, if I may say so. So, Honourable Uchit here, I would have liked to reassure him. But at the same time, town planners are professionals. And that is the whole point of this bill, that we need to trust in our planners, who we value. The planners will themselves decide upon the members of these committees. They will decide who they will vote for as chairperson or deputy chairperson of their council. And who else can do that better than themselves? So obviously we choose to trust in them, and within the constraints of their budget, they will set the fees of membership of their committees. And the qualifications will be that of town planners. They will be professional, recognized town planners. So I believe there was one last point raised by Honourable Amir Mia, and this was, and I thank my colleague, the Attorney General, for helping me find this in the bill. This is Clause 17, protection from liability. This is a very common clause that is found in all these statutory bodies that are created, but it presumes good faith. It states, no liability, civil or criminal, shall be incurred by the council, any member of the council, the registration board, or a committee, or any officer, in respect of any act done or omitted by it or him, in good faith. This is the first element. And secondly, in the discharge of its or his functions, and thirdly, in the exercise of its or his powers. So, the protection from liability applies if you are acting in discharge of your functions or exercising the powers that are yours, not if you go outside the ambit of your functions or your powers, and in any event, you have to establish good faith. So it is a very common clause found in any such bill. So, Mr. Speaker, thank you for bearing with me. I think I have addressed with your indulgence all the points that have been raised. Let me say this again. This bill, which has taken a long time to arrive, to come to this stage, is meant to recognize the contribution, past and present, of our planners, called by whatever name. Town planners, town and country planners, land planners. But we are here, and I hope we can unanimously vote on this, to pay homage to our planners, to recognize the critical importance of the work they do today and that they will do tomorrow, and to thank them for that by empowering them to have their own professional body, to recognize them as a profession that allows for recognition through registration, that allows for standards to be set by way of a code of practice and the possibility to discipline anyone that acts against the public interest and unprofessionally, and thirdly, allows for continuous development through appropriate training. Let me, as is the custom, apart from thanking all those who've contributed to the debate today, thank those who've contributed in the making of this bill. I hear a thanks addressed to the minister that I am, but I am very humbled by the fact that this bill did not originate under my mandate. This bill, I'd like to thank my predecessor, Honourable Mahen Jagru, who first introduced the bill in the House. But of course, behind the minister that does so is a whole team of professionals from my ministry. The planners, the administrators, all those who've worked over the years to come up with this bill. And I apologize to them for taking them to task time and time again in an endeavor to improve this bill by challenging all the basic assumptions, and we've come up with this final version thanks to the Attorney General and his dedicated staff that have accompanied us for months in drafting the version that is today before the House, and of course to thank the Prime Minister, without whose blessing we would not have been able to introduce the bill. With these words, Mr. Speaker, I commend the bill to this House.
The question is that the Town Planners Council Bill number 19 of 2021 be read a second time. Those in favour say aye, those against say no. The ayes have it.
Public Bills Committee stage. Clause 1 short title, Clause 2 interpretation, Clause 3 establishment of council, Clause 4 objects of council, Clause 5 functions of council, Clause 6 powers of council, Clause 7 composition of council, Clause 8 vacancy in membership of council, Clause 9 meetings of council, Clause 10 registration board, Clause 11 committees, Clause 12 disclosure of interest, Clause 13 registrar, Clause 14 delegation, Clause 15 appointment of officers, Clause 16 conditions of service of officers, Clause 17 protection from liability, Clause 18 powers of minister, Clause 19 town planning, Clause 20 registration of town planner, Clause 21 register, Clause 22 continuing professional development, Clause 23 annual fee, Clause 24 annual list.
The question is that clauses 1 to 24 stand part of the bill. Those in favour say aye, those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it.
Clause 25, local firm of town planners. Clause 26, foreign firm of town planners. Clause 27, preliminary investigation. Clause 28, disciplinary proceedings. Clause 29, professional conduct committee. Clause 30, proceedings of professional conduct committee. Clause 31, disciplinary measures. Clause 32, other disciplinary measures. Clause 33, summary proceedings. Clause 34, effect of suspension of deregistration. Clause 35, restoration of name and other particulars to register. Clause 36, general fund. Clause 37, execution of documents. Clause 38, donations. Clause 39, annual report. Clause 40, audit. Clause 41, seal of council. Clause 42, legal proceedings. Clause 43, confidentiality. Clause 44, review of decision of council. Clause 45, offences. Clause 46, regulations. Clause 47, savings and transitional provisions. Clause 48, commencement.
The question is that clauses 25 to 48 stand part of the bill. Those in favour say aye, those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it.
The schedule.
The question is that schedule stand part of the bill. Those in favour say aye, those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it.
Title and enacting clause.
The question is that the title and enacting clause stand part of the bill. Those in favour say aye, those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it. The question is that I do report to the House that the Town Planners Council Bill number 19 of 2021 has passed the committee stage without amendment. Those in favour say aye, those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it. Please be seated. Honourable members, I have to report to the House that the Town Planners Council Bill number 19 of 2021 has passed the committee stage without amendment.
Public bills third reading.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I move that the Town Planners Council Bill number 19 of 2021 be read a third time and passed.
Seconded. The question is that the Town Planners Council Bill number 19 of 2021 be read the third time and passed. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the Assembly be adjourned to Tuesday, 26th of April at 11:30 a.m.
The House stands adjourned. Adjournment matter would ask the Honourable Deputy Speaker to take the chair.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. Honourable member, please.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. I am grateful to be able to expose and highlight an issue which is of national interest, but which is at the same time a great concern in my constituency, Port Louis North, Long Mountain. I shall keep my intervention brief and to the point, as I believe we need to focus on solution rather than the problem. My specific matter addressed to the Honourable Ariram, Minister of National Infrastructure and Community Development, and the title being Urgency for the Taking of Infrastructural Measures to Mitigate the Effects of Climate Change, such as unprecedented and unpredictable rainfalls. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, our environment has become a matter of concern for each of us. And this has been the reason why I have addressed my specific adjournment to the Minister of Public Infrastructure instead of that of the Environment, because it concerns not only the Minister of Environment, but it concerns each and everyone here sitting in the August Assembly. And the call for today is more like a call for action and to find a solution. On the World Health Day, Maria Neira, Director of the Department of Public Health and Environment of the World Health Organization, mentioned, I quote, "The climate crisis is a health crisis." At the recent swearing-in ceremony of the Deputy Chairperson, Mrs. Lam Hung of the Human Rights Division of the National Human Rights Commission, in her statement to the press, she mentioned that she will be doing her best to protect and promote the rights of all Mauritian citizens, but she will focus on environment rights as human and environment are intertwined. And even today, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, while voting for the Town Planners Bill, emphasis has been laid upon the importance of good urban planning and upon the climate change. And when we talk about environment, we instantly talk about climate change. It is beyond doubt that climate change is a reality. The point is that the planet has always been undergoing climate change. Sometimes it's quietly, sometimes very dramatically. Periods of change in climate tend to be quite dramatic. We have had huge variations through the ages, and evidence is clear. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I'd like to quote here an article from the BBC. Quote, "South Africa's government has declared a state of disaster in an area in the east of the country which was hit by severe flooding over the past week, leaving nearly 400 people dead and causing major damage to homes and businesses. Most of the destruction has been in the Durban area of KwaZulu-Natal province, the country's third most populous city. President Cyril Ramaphosa claims the disaster is part of climate change, but some locals have blamed poor infrastructure for the scale of flooding," unquote. Mauritius too has been experiencing almost the same situation more than a decade now. Petite piqûre de rappel, the deadly flash flood in the history of Mauritius occurred at midday on Saturday, 30th March 2013, 152.2 millimeter of precipitations flooded the whole island within less than 1 hour 30 minutes. 9th of April 2019, the region of Fond-du-Sac received more than 110 millimeters of water between 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. The recent one in date is 2nd of April 2022 in the region of Plaine-Maillot. Mr. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, sir, with your permission, I shall now focus my intervention mainly on my constitution, as I believe that my constitution in itself, my constituency in itself is like a case study, because it is a mountainous region. To start with, we have the region of Le Haut-Terre-Rouge, Chandrabose Street, where the water from the main road of RDA from Winners to Pierre-Laval Junction gets into the laterals, thus flooding the roads because of poor infrastructure. This is what's being said by the inhabitants. Coming to Vallée des Prêtres on the 13th of March, with the sudden rise in the water level of Latanier River, which I had a question even today, Mont-Saint-Maur-Hamleguen. And here I can only imagine and share the distress of the families, the Golam family of Mont-Saint-Maur-Hamleguen, who lost all their belongings because one person tampered with the Latanier River. And let me set on record and my gratitude towards the Prime Minister who visited the inhabitants of Vallée des Prêtres following that flood. The third issue is the risk of flooding is real along the Latanier River. And well, I am here exactly to talk about this, and this is why I've put a question to the Minister of Local Authority, because we need to give special consideration. From Chitrakoot to Caroline, going through Karolalo, Kalbala, to Briqueterie, to the outlet of Mer Rouge, we need to give special consideration because the water level is unpredictable following the climatic change that we have been undergoing. In the second part of my intervention, I will dwell upon the very fact that the unprecedented heavy rainfall and unpredictable climate change, very often, we get the land which is saturated. This is what we are told. And this might cause landslide or soil erosion. Such an example could be Mont-Saint-Maur-Raffray in my constituency near the reservoir, where during the recent heavy rainfall, we experienced rocks from the mountain falling close by to the residential area. I shall also make reference to the JICA report in 2015, which identified several regions of risk, as we say it, namely Chitrakoot, where works for stabilization of the land proved to be beneficial for the inhabitants, but there are some other regions where we need to have a closer look and a closer monitoring. On the 9th of August 2021, Kongoma, Lecras Lane experienced a sudden, what the inhabitants call as glissement de terrain. Same happened in Blackburn Road, Kongoma, and these regions were already identified by the JICA report, among which we also have the Crèvecoeur region. As I mentioned initially that my constituency is mainly mountainous, so we have Crèvecoeur region. I recently visited the Houlache family in Upper Crèvecoeur, where you have cracks have been noted in several houses. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, my appeal today to the Honourable Minister is that it is now time for action. And as mentioned, these problems are not only in my constituency, because my constituency can only be a test case for climate change. However, these problems, whether it is flooding, whether it is soil erosion, has been almost present in all the constituencies. In Quatre-Bornes recently, in Cottage recently, we've noticed that we have had that montée des eaux, as we say. So we have always been questioning whether it is human beings who have tampered with the rivers, but there is also the effect of climate change. So we've also noticed that there are some people who have constructed on natural water paths. Tampering with rivers, constructions on natural drains as well have been some of the reasons why we have experienced some unprecedented flood in different regions. So we have an urgent requirement for drain network in the constituency around Mauritius as well to, comme on dit, prévenir justement and to secure the people. Also, I would request a recommendation to the Minister if he can consider doing a second assessment for the region of Kongoma and Crèvecoeur so that we can bring stabilization, something to help those people feel more safer and more secure as well. And as I'm exposing this situation in my constituency tonight, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, this is a call for action to the Minister that we need urgent drain networking, cut off drains. We need to implement all these things as soon as possible because climate change is waiting for no one. And just to quote a sentence which the Honorable Minister Boda mentioned previously as "Nous sommes des bâtisseurs." Well, I think that the Honorable Minister Bobby Ariram is definitely a bâtisseur, and he will definitely listen to the request of the MPs and definitely will bring a solution to the flood, the soil erosion, and all the climatic changes which will impact in Mauritius. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister, please.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, first of all, let me thank my honourable colleague for coming forward with this specific adjournment matter, which is indeed a matter of national interest. And I don't propose to dwell into the individual issues that she mentioned regarding the specific constituency from where she is, but rather try to explain the strategy that this government is putting in place with the land drainage master plan and try to share with colleagues in the House today. I was on this side of the House was present, except 2 members from the opposition. So I certainly took on board the suggestion of my colleague for a second assessment in the region of Kongoma. We shall look into that together. And this adjournment matter tonight provides me with the opportunity to highlight certain facts about land drainage, and in particular, actions accomplished over the past 2 years, those currently being undertaken, and our vision for the coming years. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, as the House is aware, global warming is already affecting weather and climate extreme across the whole world with heavy precipitation, flash floods, heat waves, and storms increasing in terms of the intensity and frequency. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, in its latest assessment report, AR6, has established strong and overwhelming evidence that precipitation trends are rising in terms of the frequency and intensity. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, this has never run truer than in the last decades. Recent events in the world are testimony of such predictions and happenings. For example, as the Honourable Member just mentioned, the town of Durban in South Africa has been severely affected by a flash flood event that has unfortunately cost the lives of at least 300 people. Some parts of the country have recorded their average annual rainfalls in only 2 days. On the other hand, we have all seen pictures and videos of the floods in eastern Australia that have occurred just last month, where thousands of homes were inundated. Or again, last year, at least 220 people were killed between July 12 and 15 in Western Europe as part of the deadly floods. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, no doubt such events have heavy consequences on the economic costs of countries. As evidence, for instance, the flood and storm which have inflicted the largest economy losses in the past 50 years in Europe, that is at the cost of $377 billion US. One specific example is the economic loss of US $16.5 billion US in Germany following the flood occurred in 2002. This loss is considered as being the costliest event in Europe between 1970 and 2019. I heard the Honourable Member also mentioning about landslide issues in her constituency. As she rightly mentioned, landslide is another effect of precipitation and flooding
with high water tables. And as far as I'm aware, 9 landslide prone areas were identified in constituency number 4. Kongoma, you have 4 sites, Crèvecoeur 1 site, Les Mariannes 2 sites, Aubry 1 site, and Chitrakut 1 site. However, only 1 site, namely Chitrakut, was identified as being active landslide site requiring immediate countermeasure works. I'm further informed that monitoring devices such as extensometer, rain gauges, and inclinometers have been installed to monitor the movement of the soil thereat. In addition, an early alarm system and evacuation notices are issued by the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Center during heavy rainfalls for the safety of the inhabitants of Chitrakut, using information obtained from both extensometers and the rainfall data from the meteo. Regarding the 2 other sites in constituency number 4, they are classified as low risk, which are being constantly monitored by the local authorities. Mr. Speaker, sir, therefore, the most developed countries equipped with the state-of-the-art technology and infrastructure have been subjected to the devastating effect of climate change and water-related disasters. We can imagine the fate of the most vulnerable state, in particular, the small island development states, the SIDS, as we call them. It is in fact recognized today that SID, despite being one of the least polluting nations globally, are among the most vulnerable countries to climate change and the most exposed to natural hazard due to their geographical location in an active tropical cyclone basin. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, unfortunately, Mauritius has not been spared from this worldwide or regional trend. In fact, the island of Mauritius, by its location and topography, is highly vulnerable to flooding, owing to the rise over the past years of high-intensity rainfall over a very short span of time, resulting in flash flood. A number of such extreme climatic events with disastrous and pervasive consequences, among which the flash flood experienced in Port Louis on 30th of March 2013, which caused 11 fatalities and considerable damages to infrastructure and property, are still vivid in our memory. Moreover, very recently, we have experienced record-breaking rainfall events in some unprecedented events, such as the flooding of 16 April of 2021, with just under 400 millimeters of rainfall recorded in 4 hours, and the region of Montbois experiencing around 400 millimeter rainfall in 48 hours last month. Our country has been constantly under heavy rainfall warning most of the time since December last. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, it has to be pointed that our drainage infrastructure has not been designated to cater for such flash floods events. They do not have sufficient capacity to drain stormwater during rainfall. Nor has there been a proper maintenance plan for the drain vehicle. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, as I have mentioned on several occasions in this House, particularly in my replies to parliamentary questions, government is very much concerned about the effect of climate change. In this respect, addressing the problems of heavy rainfall and flooding in a sustainable manner remain very high on our agenda. Concurrently, we are also implementing short-term mitigating measures to bring prompt relief to the inhabitants at large. I said it well. We are into mitigation. There won't be any dry fit policy. The opposition members, those who are against the government, can go and, cry, shout at any roof that government is doing nothing. But as I've said earlier, you've seen what's happening in countries with a state-of-art technology. You've seen what's happening in America. You've seen what's happening in Holland. You've seen what's happening in Australia. So some water, when it's raining, there will be some water accumulation. But what is important is that the water gets evacuated within minutes. For instance, last month we had that heavy rainfall in Port Louis. There was accumulation of water in front of Coda. Pictures went viral, like as if it's doomed of scenarios. But within minutes after the rain has stopped, contrary to what has happened in 2013, where there were 11 people dying in the city center of Port Louis, the water got evacuated. So this is what we need to know. During rainfall, we need to develop that culture of emergency. We need to know how to deal with it, just like when we deal with cyclones. When there are cyclones, you reinforce your houses, you buy your candles. So we'll have to get used. When there are rainfalls, we'll have to take certain measures. You have had houses that has been built since independence. Houses built below sea level, below road levels. So, and there are some places where technical solutions are inexistent. This government is doing everything possible to try to mitigate. So we should get it right. We are into mitigation. As the House will recall, one of the priorities of the budget measure 2021-2022 has been the establishment of a national flood management program, where around 1,500 drain projects have been earmarked for implementation in 3 years. In 3 years, Mr. Speaker, sir. When you hear those speaking against this government, they are like, you've got 11.7 million. What have you done with it? That's not Baja, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. No, we're talking about drains. This is indeed a challenging task, not to say a daunting one ahead. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, currently we have 71 high-risk flood-prone areas that have been identified across Mauritius. And this figure is dynamic, with heavy rainfall affecting drastically other parts of the island. The flooding and inundation problem in those areas are being dealt with on a fast-track basis. In fact, under PPO Directive 41, emergency procurement procedures have been put in place to ensure that drain projects in these localities are implemented urgently. Out of this 71 sites, 12 drain projects have already been completed. 17 are under construction, and others are under different implementation stages. I will briefly explain the other measure being initiated and implemented by government to address the effect of climate change. As I had the opportunity to mention in this House, the Land Drainage Authority has since quite a while now equipped itself with a 3D imagery of the topography of the whole country, including road rigs, called the Digital Elevation Model, the DEM. This DEM allows us to identify vulnerable areas and natural water courses, because you have other funny people going, backfilling water courses, thinking these cannot be located. But no, now we can. With this DEM, we know where are the natural water courses. We know, my colleague mentioned Mosel Maram Lagan. There were those boundary walls falling. Some of those boundary walls were built on natural water courses. This DEM allows us to identify the vulnerable areas and natural water courses. It has already been shared with relevant authorities, including the local authorities. So as from now, when they are giving you a building permit, they can see on that plot of land where you're building where the natural water courses are, and then instruct accordingly where to build, where to put the boundary walls, what to do, what are the do's and the don'ts. More recently, the LDA has also acquired a state-of-the-art drone with 4K imagery that we use to conduct our own surveys. We can, whether it's ongoing works or inundated areas or surveying rivers, for instance, we were surveying Canal d'Ayo, and we saw at 2 different locations people throwing their construction waste into the river. So you can imagine that consequence. What can happen during a heavy rainfall? All that waste will be carried into the river, and then blocking that river and inundating people's house. Lala gouvernement pas bon. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I wish to stress here, with the dam on one hand and the drone on the other, we are better armed to identify promptly any affected zone, area following a heavy rainfall event, therefore allowing us to initiate immediate mitigating countermeasure work. However, we should also recognize that with the increasing population per capita income and also the rapid infrastructure development, there is a high pressure for forested and agricultural land to be cleared in favor of urbanization, leading to increased surface runoff and even increasing challenges for an efficient land drainage system. Accordingly, there is a need to address the emerging climate challenges from a holistic approach. There was the need, therefore, to develop a plan to serve a basis to conceptualize strategies to be implemented by all stakeholders to reduce anthropogenic effects on the vulnerability to heavy rain and flood incidences. The more importantly, to formulate sustainable solutions to mitigate the risk of flooding in the future. In this respect, the Land Drainage Master Plan was initiated in January 2020. Its aim to provide technical assistance to Land Drainage Authority in form of vulnerability and feasibility studies, drafting of national policy, good governance, action plan, and capacity building. It is also intended to support the LDA in their effort to provide guidelines and principles of stormwater management to designers in order to mitigate the impact caused by their projects. It will also propose appropriate regulatory and preventive measures to be able to control the issues of flooding more effectively. I have the pleasure to inform the House the master plan has been finalized and is ready. Government will take stock of the proposal therein, following which I will have the opportunity to give more detail thereon. Allow me, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, to outline some innovative measures which can be implemented in our endeavor to build resilience to climate change. Bioretention swales, which is one suggestion that my friend the Attorney General and Minister of Agriculture made, so as we can build same across motorways, so as it give, one, it capture water, and secondly, it gives you a greener motorway. Secondly, retention ponds, whereby an integrated approach to flood risk and overall water management has been adopted. Third, blue and green infrastructure to be adopted as part of the urban design and land use planning strategies, taking inspiration from international integrated water management strategies, including sustainable drainage systems seen in the UK or low-impact development in the US. Sponge cities aim to control and improve urban flooding, water pollution, and microclimates, recycle rainwater resources, and reinstate degraded environment. Fourth, higher safety factors has been applied to the design of drains and culverts in the form of freeboards, safety factor to designate distance between water surface and elevation of a structure. Fifth, an all-alarm system. As I was saying, we are into mitigation, so things can go wrong, yes, despite infrastructures. We will need evacuation plan, God forbid, but better be prepared. 6, floodplain restoration on riverbank as well as river training. 5th, flood diversion and storage measures like Rivière des Anguilles Dam, which the Minister of Finance has announced its construction in this House previously. So in brief, Mr. Speaker, sir, what we are considering is a mixture of structural and non-structural measures, as we now have an urgency to adapt to this dynamic situation. As a long-term vision, this government will always strive to build better and in a more intelligent manner. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, we do not intend on this issue to sell dreams in our combat against climate change. Each and every year, you can see for yourself the number of cities that have the latest technologies in terms of weather forecasts, state-of-the-art drainage infrastructure that are submerged by intense rainfall. We are very aware of the dangers that loom on Mauritius at every rainy season. We are at war. Yes, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. Again, and yet another invisible enemy. An enemy which may attack at any moment, invade our moments, and even take lives. But we are confident that we are on the right track, as evidenced by the World Risk Report. This is why I urge this House to put our differences aside and work as one unit to further improve this variation. Some will raise questions about the amount of funds being injected in our new drain infrastructures. Some will joke that it's money down the drain or not a priority. They couldn't be more wrong, Mr. Speaker, sir, Deputy Speaker, sir. La vie de nos citoyens n'a pas de prix. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir.
Thank you very much. Have a safe trip back.